Good evening, everyone. This is Sandra Hempstead. I'm the Regional Rotary Foundation Coordinator for Zone 34, and I'd like to welcome you to this evening's webinar. I know we couldn't hear that last video. What I'd like to do is ask Kim Walden if she would share it at the end of our session, straight from the site. So we'll all be able to hear it because that's a very profound video about polio, and I want to make sure that each of you hear it. Please note that our session is being recorded. We'll share the recording and the slides following the webinar. Closed captions are enabled, so if you haven't already done so, please select your preferred language from the menu at the bottom of your screen. We will have significant time for questions in this session because our session this evening is a panel of Rotary leaders, both Rotarian volunteers and staff, who are here to answer all of your questions in an Ask Me Anything type session. I do want to thank the folks that provided questions towards the end of our November webinar. We do have those questions and we'll tee those up as we start. But for those of you that are on tonight, please do put your questions in the Q&A box and we'll take those as they come. We are privileged to have with us this evening Patrick Eakes, our own Rotary International Director for Zones 33 and 34, and he's serving in that capacity in the years 24 through 26. Patrick's a member of the Rotary Club of Crescent, North Carolina in District 7690 in Zone 33. And we're so excited that you're here with us, Patrick. And at this time, I'd like to ask you to offer your opening comments.
Well, thank you, Sandra. It is my treat to be with all of you this evening. So thank you. And I want to add my welcome to Sandra's. We're glad all of you are here this evening. Our Zones 33-34 Foundation Regional Action Plan team has produced 4 interesting webinars already this year. I've enjoyed each of them. But now at the December holidays, we're taking a little bit different approach with an Ask Me Anything format. I've been a part of a few Ask Me Anything sessions in the last couple of weeks. They're usually really fun and educational, and I'm sure tonight's session will be both of those things. Before I hand over the microphone to our panelists, I want to wish all of you holidays full of joy and love. This is a time of year to be thankful, and I'm full of gratitude for all of you who support our Rotary Foundation with your time, your energy and effort, and certainly your personal resources. Your support puts the gas in Rotary's engine, and I'm appreciative for all of you. It is my pleasure to introduce our panelists for this evening's Ask Me Anything format. And we have 5 panelists, and I'll introduce them in alphabetical order. Nancy Barbie is a Zone 33 In Polio Now coordinator. She's also the immediate past Regional Rotary Foundation coordinator for Zone 33. Sandra Hempstead is the Zone 34 Regional Rotary Foundation coordinator. She also serves as chair of our Zones 33-34 Foundation Regional Action Plan, the group that brings you these monthly webinars. Katie Leisner works for our Rotary Foundation. She's the annual giving officer, and she serves both Zone 33 and 34. She supports clubs and districts to increase their support of our Rotary Foundation. Laurie Menzel also works for our Rotary Foundation as the Major Gifts Officer. She serves the northern part of Zone 33, Mid-Atlantic states. As her job title implies, she works with larger donors to help them realize their philanthropic goals. Our final panelist is Bernie Rydell. Bernie serves as the Zone 33 Regional Rotary Foundation Coordinator, and he's a former In Polio Now coordinator. This is a powerhouse panel, so we need a moderator who can wrangle all of this talent. And that moderator is Beth Trotter. Beth is the Zone 33 Endowment and Major Gifts Advisor. And Beth, my friend, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Thank you so much, Director Patrick. I appreciate it, and I echo your sentiments. I hope everybody is going to have a a wonderful holiday and that you're ready for the season. So let's get started with our panelists, and remember to use the Q&A box to submit any questions that you have. I see a few coming in already. I'm going to get started with some of the questions that we've received in the past as well. And the first one goes to Zone 33 Regional Rotary Foundation Coordinator, Bernie Rydell. Bernie, question your way is, what percentage of all members give to the foundation? And then what percentage from our zone?
Well, that's an interesting question, Beth. It just so happens, coincidentally, I do have some numbers I can share with you. Thanks to Katie. Katie, thank you for sending them to me earlier. I do want to put things in perspective here. So the first number I'm going to give you is giving to the foundation globally, everything. That's polio, annual fund, and endowment for last year. All the figures I'm going to give you are from 23-24. So for last year, all giving to the foundation, 39% of the members, all members, that's over 1.1 million members, only 39% gave anything to the Rotary Foundation. So now I'm going to compare, we're going to do some comparison, but I don't know if anybody's shocked. I've seen these numbers before. That is a low number when you consider 1.1 million Rotarians, and 39%, less than 40%, have given anything to the annual fund, polio, or endowment. Now, we don't have a way of comparing directly to Zone 33 and 34 with those kind of numbers. But what I've done is I've taken let's just look at the annual fund, okay? Let's just look at the annual fund, not everything. So the annual fund for last year globally was 34.6, okay? 34.6 members gave to the annual fund last year globally. In Zone 34, see, I can compare now. I can compare specific numbers. So in Zone 34, 65.7% gave to the annual fund. So that's quite a difference, from 34 globally to 65 in Zone 34. Zone 33, however, Sandra, you'll be interested to hear this. Zone 33, our number was 70.84% gave. Now I'm guessing 70 is, yeah, that's more than 75. So that's, but I wanted to put things in perspective. So now that's the annual fund. Is anybody interested in club giving, do you think? Beth, anybody interested in club percentage, or just the members? Just members.
I think it would be great to hear club giving, yes.
Okay. I happen to have those. So let's look at the club participation now. Now we're not doing members now. We're doing club participation. So for example, there's globally last year, there's over 35,000 clubs. 81% gave something, the clubs. In Zone 34, I can direct comparison here, 770 clubs last year, 91% gave something to the Rotary Foundation, to the annual fund, to the annual fund. In Zone 33, 94%, Sandra, 94% gave to the annual fund. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is polio. I got to get through, I'm a polio guy. I got to get through some polio numbers. Globally last year, clubs, 60% gave to polio. Zone 34, that number for 770 clubs, 75%, very good, gave to polio. That's very good. And then Zone 33 was, again, 80%, Sandra, 80%. But anyway, I just wanted to show you those numbers. Our two zones are doing great if you compare them to globally. So, Beth, thank you for that question.
Oh, you're welcome. Bernie, I'm going to stay with you for a real quick second because a question came in from somebody on this call tonight that is asking a question about recognition. They say that they have club members who receive Paul Harris recognition pins from other clubs before they move to their club. How do we get that information to the foundation so it's included in the reports online, the club reports?
And Katie, that's probably
Katie,
a good
want to jump in on that one also. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, this is not my exact specialty, but I would suspect that once the transition of the member from one club to the other is completed online, that all of their recognition points will travel with them. And so occasionally our reports are based off the numbers at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. So it might take a little bit of time for the transaction to be completed. But like hold tight, it'll make it over. I'm sorry for any delay.
May I give a quick
And I
comment?
want to,
Please do. Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to recommend that if you're a club foundation chair and you have a member who's saying this, make sure that there are not two different member numbers in the system. Occasionally, when someone transfers from one club to another, they start a new number. So that might be the case as well. And a quick email to the Rotary Contact Center could help to determine that.
yes, and merge those numbers so that there's just one. But
Right.
that's a great
Yep.
point, Sandra.
Excellent
Thank you.
point.
Yep, thank you so much. So let's move to Lori Menzel. Lori, this question is for you. Can we give a directed gift to the endowment? And how does Rotary handle those?
Okay, wonderful. So a directed gift is what it sounds like. It's a donor giving a gift and they direct it. So for our directed gifts, you can't use them with the endowment. And the biggest reason is because a directed gift is meant to be spent right away for a global grant. So for instance, there's two ways you can do directed gifts. One is a donor can give $15,000 for a directed gift, and it will be used, they specify the area of focus, and then it will be spent according, the Rotary Foundation staff will spend it when there's a grant available that needs funding in that area of focus. However, you can do a donor can also do a directed gift of $30,000. And if they do it at $30,000, they pick the district that it will go with, as well as the area of focus. So for example, let's say I decide to do a $30,000 directed gift for water and sanitation, and I'm in District 7610. So I will work with my district Rotary Foundation chair and the Global Grant chair and say, I'm given this gift and I want it to go for a water and sanitation grant. And so we'll work together on that. But you don't put these in the endowment because they're not invested. They're meant to be used pretty quickly. Sometimes it might take a year or two, depending on the grant cycle where you are with those and what's going on with grants. And there's a special place when you do a global grant in the budget to select that directed gift is available to be selected as part of the budgeting process. So I hope that answers the question on how we handle directed gifts.
Thank you very much, Lori. I appreciate it. Let's move to our FC from 34, Sandra Hempstead. Sandra, what steps is the Rotary Foundation taking to grow the average per member giving?
Well, thank you for that question. That's an important one. We do recognize that we have quite a few donors that donate repeatedly year after year or during various times in their tenure with the Rotary Foundation. So it's important that we look at encouraging members to give, encouraging them to grow their giving over time. We do that really through thanking our donors, through explaining the works that we're doing with the funds that are donated, and encouraging them to give to those particular either areas of focus or polio or areas that they're particularly interested in. I think quite a number of the districts have giving campaigns, and I know some that have giving campaigns at the end of the year as well. And those are ways that we encourage members to continue to give to the Rotary Foundation. And I think the folks that are on this call as club foundation chairs, you're our ace. You are really the folks that are working with each of the members to give. And so as you're talking to members in your club about giving to the foundation, you're the folks that are really, our feet on the ground. We know Rotary happens at the club level. So you're the folks that are really helping members to understand what we're doing with their funds, whether it's at your club level or what we're doing with the Rotary Foundation internationally. So that's how we're working on increasing per member giving.
Thank you so much, Sandra. I want to do a follow-up with Lori because somebody sent in a question about the directed gifts. Where is it kept until it's used, Lori?
It's basically kept in, it's called a tracked gift. So it has its own number. And so it's kept separate. And that way we can identify it. It just sits there until it's ready to be used.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Nancy, I'm going to ask you a question, and believe it or not, it's not related to polio, even though we will get some for you for polio. But this question I want to jump to because we know our areas have been affected recently with disasters. But how can your club support disaster response in our zones? Could you handle that for us, Nancy?
Yeah, that's a great question. That the Rotary Foundation has a disaster relief fund, and that money is used at one time. Districts, once the money is collected, and the districts can submit an application for that one time a year. We've done that quite a few times in North Carolina, especially with the disasters that we've had recently. But clubs can support that disaster relief fund by making contributions to that. And then in turn, the district can submit an application for those grants. And it's a one-time deal, $25,000, and it's immediate almost. Once they apply, they get that grant, and it can be used however the disaster is needed, what's needed for that disaster. Hope that answers that.
It does. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
May
And-
I add something as well?
Please.
Yes, our zones have a disaster fund as well, and the clubs are definitely able to donate to that. It is used for disaster within our paired zones, so zones 33 and 34. And we have, as you've noted, had quite a bit of need over the last year with the hurricanes and whatnot that has happened in both 33 and 34. So we really appreciate the donations that have come into the zone disaster fund as well.
Thank you, Sandra. I appreciate that. Katie, this question's for you, and this is coming in from clubs that would like to make presentations on the foundation to their club. And where can they find a presentation with slides to give for a club program?
Thank you for asking. This is one of my favorite questions to answer because it's easy enough. If you go to the annual fund page of the Rotary Foundation's website, link is here. And the PowerPoint is at the footer of the website. So if you scroll down on the page into the annual fund resources category, so 4 of the 12th of 14 bullets, easy to find. And the PowerPoint is named Doing Good in the World with the Rotary Foundation, parentheses, and every Rotarian every year, E-Ray club presentation. There are slides number 7 and 8 that are left partially blank for club leaders to put information about the global grants and whatever. I'm reading my notes, yes, and the district grants that you participated in over the past year. And don't forget to add pictures of members doing service projects because that's people respond to, especially if they know them or have seen them before. So that's where I'd start.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie. Bernie, this one's for you. And, during the club presentations on the foundation or any club presentation, it's really nice to be sure we're recognizing our donors. They're asking, what are the best practices for presenting Paul Harris recognition pins at club meetings? Oh, Bernie, you're on mute, please. Thank you.
How's that?
Great.
I'm
Thanks.
back. Thank you, Beth. I've been to a lot of club meetings through these years, and when I see some of the Paul Harris Fellow recognitions that they do, it pains me because it's a wonderful opportunity for us to to promote the foundation and to recognize an individual. And sometimes just handle it so poorly. It's a missed opportunity. Here's what I think. Here's what I think we should do for Paul Harris, and not just Paul Harris Fellows, but Paul Harris Society, bequests, major donors, things like that. They all kind of follow the same best practices, if you will. You may want to get a different person if you can, to a more, maybe a district person or somebody to present some of them. But for a Paul Harris, let's just take Paul Harris Fellow. So what you want to do is you want to plan it. You want to plan it. You want to have the club foundation chair and the president actually plan the presentation. Have a script, and I'll mention a little later that there are scripts available that you can take and modify if you want to make it yours, to personalize it. But make it a big deal. Make it a formal presentation. Have a script, and take your time and try to, I wouldn't do it for just one or two. Try to do it when you have a number of Paul Harris Fellows or all the other categories that we talked about. Get somebody, maybe your AG, to come in and do it. Or if a great opportunity is when the district governor is coming to visit your club. That's a great time to kind of have these kind of recognitions. Or have somebody from the district. If you have a lot of Paul Harris Fellows, you should be able to have somebody from the district come in and do it. And the same for the other awards too. This is, we don't get a lot of chance other than to say thank you and recognize Rotarians. They don't get a salary. This is important to thank them and recognize them. So don't treat this lightly. It's very important. And I would send you to this. I'm going to put this in the chat. I'm going to send you to our foundation Dropbox. And I'll put it in there. It has to do with tiny URL, and it's very short. I'll put it in there. And if you go there, there is a folder. It's folder number 13, and it's called TRF Recognition Presentations. And it gives you a template or samples how to do it. Fill in your own information, modify it. But I actually think it's pretty good. So I'm going to put that in the chat, and hopefully you will actually go there and download it and use it in the future. So, Beth, back to you.
Thank you so much, Bernie. That's great. Sandra, I have a question for you regarding giving still. And we know that not all clubs have their own club foundations, but some do. And obviously the person that sent this question in does. And they want to know, how could they coordinate the giving to our club foundation with giving to the Rotary Foundation?
That's a great question, and I'm really glad someone asked it. I will ask others to chime in as I finish, but I suspect we could talk for an hour about just this one topic, because sometimes there is a little bit of a disparity between the two foundations and some confusion. So I think a lot of new members don't realize sometimes they've given to their club's foundation and the money has not made it to the Rotary Foundation of Rotary International. And they are then asking about their Paul Harris or some award that they think they might be deserving. So I think it's important as a club foundation chair to make sure that if your club has its own foundation, that you distinguish those two. And you may call the Rotary Foundation of Rotary International just that. And your club's foundation is the Rotary Club of, and your name foundation. So it's very distinctly different. And I think one of the best practices that I've seen really is with a club who maybe has done a fundraiser or something and is going to give the funds to the Rotary, to the club's foundation, have them indicate to the club's foundation what they would like the money to be spent on. If they would like a portion of that to be spent on global grants or district grants or polio or something that is going to go to the Rotary Foundation of Rotary International, that can be a directed gift to their club foundation to say, Club Foundation, please send this $1,500 that we raised in our polio fundraiser to the Rotary Foundation of Rotary International for polio, for example. So I think that helps to clarify between members that there are two foundations, and then helps the two foundations to work together. in supporting the great work that the Rotarians in the club are doing.
Thank you so much, Sandra. We've been receiving a few questions about grants, and I'm going to get to that. But before we do, I'm going to jump over to Lori. Lori, a question came in about a legacy dinner, that they say their district is holding a legacy dinner. They want to know more about what this is and why should they give.
Okay, great question. I think this is on the top of the mind of a lot of districts right now because it's one of Trustee Chair Mark Maloney's magical markers, right? And he has challenged districts, if they're able, to hold these type of events. And they might be called different things. Sometimes they're called $1 million dinners, legacy campaigns, legacy events. And so each district has a little bit different definition sometimes. And so I would tell that person to go to their district Rotary Foundation chair, or maybe there is a legacy chair, have them talk to them, ask them, say, what does this mean if they haven't heard any of the advertising or the information about something like this that's going on in your district, and ask them, you know, what is it your goal? What is it you're trying to do? Most of these are goals to raise $1 million or more of new gifts to the Rotary Foundation. But again, each district has different ways they do it. They count gifts differently. And so it's really important to kind of get that information. When it comes to, you know, attending the dinner, sometimes that's part of, you know, there's just so many different things. So I don't want to say specifically it's one thing for these type of campaigns because they can be very different for each district. And, you know, when it comes to why should I give, that's such a personal decision, right? That's what is it that you're passionate about? What is it about Rotary that, you know, that you want to see continue? Are you passionate about giving to polio, or maybe you, one of the areas of focus or the peace centers, right? Any of those Rotary designations. And so I think why should I give really comes down to your personal decision. Maybe it's the timing, you know, of it. And if it happens to fall while these wonderful campaigns are going on, that's wonderful. And we will celebrate it with you. If it doesn't, we'll celebrate it anyway when that day happens. But there's so many wonderful things that are going on with these legacy campaigns. So I encourage you to really contact your district.
Thank you so much, Lori. I appreciate that. Katie, I'm going to jump over to you right now and ask a question about whether or not Rotary has an annual foundation calendar, and is there a roadmap for clubs to follow on foundation?
Yep. So first I'm going to show you the website on My Rotary. It's like our calendar for the year that talks about the area of focus is highlighted each month of the year. And I also have a I have a roadmap for, right now it's labeled Club Presidents. It gives detail about what's going on next this coming Rotary year. So it offers a breakdown of what to expect during the timeline. And so it'll show you each month a few things that are happening and some links to pay attention to during that month. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks for
Thank
sharing
you.
those links and sharing all that information.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy, I have one for you, and this time it is about polio. So the question is, has Rotary responded to comments about removing FDA approval of the polio vaccine under the next U.S. administration?
Yes, well, not officially, but this is what we're saying to people, and it's the truth. We're fundraisers and we're advocates for polio. We don't get involved in the politics of what each country is doing and what they're not doing. So our job is still to raise money and and provide education of why we should continue to eradicate polio. I mean, it is our #1 priority in the Rotary Foundation. It is our legacy. It is a promise that we made to the children of the world, and that's what we're going to continue, and we'll continue to do that no matter who's in office or who's not in office. So that's what we're going to do. But let me jump back to the question you asked originally, and thank you, Sandra, for jumping in with that. Patrick posted on the chat that the zone's disaster recovery fund has distributed $340,000 of grants to clubs affected by Hurricane Helene and Milton so far. And I believe Patrick tells a story of he was somewhere on maybe in Evanston, and he can tell you more about that too. And before he reached home, gifts had been given and disaster fund had been set up. So that was great. But thank you for the question about polio. We will continue it, so don't give up.
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate that. And I appreciate Director Patrick sharing that information about our disaster recovery fund. That's incredible, the work that our clubs are doing. So keep on doing it. It's what we do best. And talking about that, I'll switch over to questions about grants. And so Sandra or Bernie, feel free to jump in on this one. And the question came in tonight in the 2023-24 annual report. The number of global grants were more than district grants. In the US, it feels like we do more district grants than global grants. Can you share your perspective on that?
Do you want me to start, Bernie?
Yes, Sandra.
Okay,
yes.
so the district grants are considered block grants. So for example, a district can do one grant, but in that one grant, they will have perhaps 50 or 60 projects. So when we count the grants at the Rotary Foundation, we count one grant per district. So that's why you won't see as many district grants as you will see global grants, but certainly each district has a number of projects included in their district block grant.
Thank you so much. That clarified that really nicely. So the next question is asking for some samples of competitive grants and how do we submit grant applications for those competitive grants? And then also, can you elaborate on the minimum or maximum for grant requests?
So there is no minimum for grant requests. There is a budget, but there's no minimum for the amount of money that you ask from the Rotary Foundation from the World Fund. So our minimum budget for a global grant is $30,000. But if we have, for example, funded $25,000, we can ask for $5,000 from the World Fund. And for those of you that are familiar with the grant system, when you put your global grant in the system, it will tell you the maximum you can ask for from the World Fund, but you can put in whatever number you would like. So it doesn't have to, you don't have to use the maximum, for example. Hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. What about examples of some competitive grants?
Well, I'm not exactly sure what they're talking about with regard to competitive grants. Are we talking about the projects of scale grants, which are very large? It's possible that they are discussing that, and typically there's a number of years in preparation before those types of grants are submitted. And during those preparatory years, the club that's working on those grants will be doing a series of smaller and perhaps increasing in scope global grants. And then when they're ready, they will apply for a program of scale grant. And there's a few steps in that process. And I don't know if anyone else on this call knows about those steps. I have yet to ever put one in. So there are a few steps in that process, and there's some steps that weed out perhaps and take the larger number of grants down to a smaller number of applicants. And there typically is one applicant that's awarded each year.
Great. Thank you so much, Sandra. I appreciate that. Katie, I'm going to jump back over to you because this is a question about reports, and we know that you're the expert on reports for us. So this individual is a new club foundation chair, and they want to know what report would be best for them to use to identify members who are close to their Paul Harris Fellow.
Sure. So to look for Paul Harris Fellow recognition, the best place to look is the Club Recognition Summary, which is a report that's available both on My Rotary and Club Central. And so I would encourage the leader to pull the report and look in the Paul Harris Society column and look for the columns that are not populated with the Paul Harris Society level that that member has been attributed. Should have started to say, like, that report pulls a line on the report for each member of the club. And so be able to see the information about each member. If there is nothing in the Paul Harris recognition column, look over to their total foundation recognition points and see who's close to $1,000 points. So those are either points from dollars they've given or from other people who have transferred points to them. And so once that reaches 1,000 points, they're eligible to become Paul Harris Fellow.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So a question about a past webinar that we had. Somebody had said there was a skit on the ghost of Paul Harris, and it was discussed. And they're wondering where they can get a copy of that. Whoever knows that, you want to take a stab at that and answer it for us? Sandra, you look like you're ready to.
Well, I will make sure that that's uploaded on our Foundation Matters website. I do recall the ghost of Paul Harris and the discussion about the ghost coming to visit at the club, and it's a little skit. So I'll definitely share that if it's not already out on our Foundation Matters website. Which gives me an opportunity to tell you the Foundation Matters website is a link on the Zone 3334 website. And you would just go under Foundation, under Resources, and then under Foundation, you'll see Foundation Matters. And we do have quite a few items there. And that's where you'll find also all of the recordings.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. This question is going to go over to Lori. Lori, how can we become aware of and be able to best recognize Rotarians and their bequests?
Okay, this kind of follows along with some of the discussion we've been having about reports, right? Especially if you're, let's say you're the club foundation chair or the club president. At that level, go out. My suggestion is, if you want to be aware of who is on one side, who are the members in your club that are bequest society members. And remember, bequest society are donors who have made a commitment in the future to give $10,000 or more out of their estate plan to the Rotary Foundation. And so you can go out there to My Rotary and look at the foundation reports. And when you scroll down, go down to the major donor, Arch Club Society, Bequest Society report. And you can pull that. And as long as they're not an anonymous donor, it will show up there and you'll be able to see which Rotarians in your club are Bequest Society members. And so once you're aware of who those people are, if they haven't, maybe they're a new Bequest Society member, just kind of depends, but always ask someone first before you recognize anyone in public, right? It's really important to be very donor centric. They may not want to be recognized publicly, but if they do want to be recognized publicly, give them a chance to speak. I think you can really build awareness that way for others if you provide them with an opportunity to give their why. Why is it they've decided to be a Bequest Society member? What's important to them about leaving their legacy through the Rotary Foundation? And so that can be a great way to not only recognize them, but also inspire others. And this can go on the same thing, even at the district level. Maybe it's a district conference, or maybe it's a foundation dinner, or whatever the occasion is. But that's one way to be able to become aware of who they are and the best way to recognize them.
Thank you so much, Lori. I have two more questions and then we're going to be wrapping it up. Nancy, this one's going to come over to you about polio, please. The question is, what are the current number of polio cases and why do you think the numbers are rising? That's the first part. And then what are Rotary and our partners doing to address this?
Well, as of today, there are 88 cases, and there are more in Pakistan, 62-ish, I think, in Pakistan, and then the other ones in Afghanistan. There are a lot of factors involved in the number of cases rising. Could be monsoon season, and during that time it's hot and people are traveling and the virus spreads quicker. There's also the government. Every time the government changes, they have a lax in vaccination campaigns because every government has a different opinion. So far, the government in Pakistan has come back and said, yes, we will support. We will support. More transient people. This is the time when people are moving from job to job, moving around the country. We're also reaching areas that have never been reached before. And so that, because we know where those children are now, we're seeing the cases are being discovered. So, which is a good thing. And if you remember years ago when there was when India was being eradicated, going through the eradication process, there was a surge at the end of the term when right before it was eradicated, there was a laxum. The cases went down, 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 and then all of a sudden a surge came about. But then we recovered. Again, our partners, WHO, UNICEF, the governments of the different countries are addressing the issues, as are Rotarians, with our contributions, with our campaigns, taking part in the campaigns. And so we continue to advocate, we continue to fundraise, we continue to educate of why it's still important. And I think that's the key right there, to educate and to keep it on the forefront. And if we do that and keep it out front of everyone, because we say it, and I can't say it enough, until this disease is eradicated, every child in the world, whether it's my grandchildren, your grandchildren, everybody's grandchildren, everybody's children are at risk. And we want to make sure that that's done.
Thank you so much. We've reached the end of nearly the conclusion. I'm going to pass it over to Sandra. But Sandra, maybe you can take a real quick stab at just this question, which is what is the best tactic for somebody to use in their club to keep the Rotary Foundation regularly on their agenda for club meetings?
Thank you for that question. And that sometimes is a challenge because the clubs tee up all of their speakers sometimes for the year and very early. I would say keep presenting smaller, bite-sized pieces of information about the foundation each time your club meets, whether it's called a foundation moment, whether it's however your club decides to define it, but keeping that in front of your club. And I would also encourage you to keep those bite-sized chunks. Sometimes they should be the Rotary area of focus for the month. Sometimes it should be an accomplishment of your club, whether it's a giving accomplishment. And I would encourage you to look at the total giving for your club from the beginning of time. You might be surprised at how much your club has given. And that would be something really, really cool to tell your club. For example, I know of a club that just achieved $100,000. They're a 5-year-old club. So that's an accomplishment that's really important to share. And then also sometimes your Rotary Foundation topic for the day can be recognition of members. It can be a discussion of a particular service project that your club is doing, whether it's your district grant project or a global project. So it doesn't have to be general in nature. It can be specific and it can be very personal.
Thank you, Sandra. And thank you to all the panelists. Really appreciate the questions that were submitted by our members. Thank you so much for being on the call tonight. And Sandra, let you wrap it up.
Okay, thank you. And I echo your thoughts. The questions that came in were excellent. And I appreciate those questions. I do have a couple of reminders while we're waiting for the video. And one of them is regarding polio. I know a number of the clubs have had their polio fundraiser in October. And I would ask that if you have raised the funds for polio, that you check with your club treasurer to make sure the funds have actually been submitted to the Rotary Foundation. Sometimes it takes a little time for a club to do that, and we'd appreciate getting those funds as quickly as we can. And if your club did not do a polio fundraiser, we would suggest that perhaps one of the easy ways to do one at this point, and they can be done anytime during the year, by the way, is to ask members if they'd like to join the Polio Plus Society and collect some donors and some funds that way. Looks like we're ready for the video.
Right now, at this very moment, there's a movement happening. See, Rotary sparked an idea that was once unthinkable, ridding the world of a horrible disease, polio. A global community of scientists, advocates, governments, and health workers, people all doing their part to beat the unbeatable, track the untraceable, reach the unreachable. And it's all happening right now, people. This part of history belongs to everybody, so tell everybody, near, far, young, and old, that it will take everybody. Because legacies aren't forged overnight. Making history isn't instant. In the decades since Rotary and its partners started this journey, billions of children have been protected from polio. But we still have work to do. And this part's on us. All of us. Part-time, full-time, full stop. Right now, no breaks, no indifference. You and me. Because polio isn't unstoppable. We are. Together, we end polio.
What I'll do is I will email the video out with the follow-up email that I'll send in the next couple of days. But I do hope that you take a look at it. It's really an excellent video. Kim, can we go back to the slides? So in addition to supporting polio and ensuring that the funds have gotten into the Rotary Foundation, I'd like to also give you some year-end reminders. We know that there are some members for tax purposes and perhaps the folks that are 70 and a half making their required minimum distribution to a charity, which is the Rotary Foundation of Rotary International. It's important for them to get their funds submitted during the 2024 calendar year. So if you have folks that need to submit by the end of the year, if they're submitting in a check, make sure that both the postmark and the date on the check are no later than New Year's Eve on 24, and that the check is actually processed no later than January 7th. If they missed any of these dates, they will be processed for the 2025 calendar year. When folks are going online on Rotary.org, they must put the donation in the system and have it authorized by 12/31 and midnight Central Time. And then for wire transfers, they need to be initiated before the 30th by 5 o'clock Central Time and received at the Rotary Foundation by January 2nd in order to qualify as a 2024 gift. I also wanted to leave you with a little bit of information that I actually found at one of the last few pages of your December Rotary magazine, and that is the support that we give to Rotary members and the work of Rotary through the Rotary Foundation at various different levels. And I think this is important because every donation that we get is important, whether it's $15 and it's giving polio vaccines to a number of children, whether it's the highest one we have on the slide here, $320 for a peace leadership training, or whether it's $1,000 or $10,000 or $250,000, every single donation that we make as Rotarians is important to the Rotary Foundation. And I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but your work with the Rotary Foundation as a club president and a club foundation chair, and I realize we have others on the call that are in different roles as well, but your work is extremely important to us, whether you're asking for a gift to the Rotary Foundation, whether you're doing the work of the Rotary Foundation, it's truly appreciated, and I want you to realize that and to know how much we appreciate each and every one of you. Now, I am going to wrap it up here. Our next meeting is January 23rd at 6 p.m. And you'll hear more about that, and there is a link out there that I'll share in the follow-up. And as we end today, I just want to wish each and every one of you a happy holidays, happy new year. I know I heard there's 14 different holidays between now and the beginning of January. So whatever holiday that you celebrate, I wish it to be celebrated with your family and your friends, and that you have a wonderful, joyous holiday season. Thank you very much, everyone, and this will end our call this evening.